women so often, to me, have a kind of continuous quality, which can go on really for quite a long time. Whereas with the man, so often it seems in spurts, up and down. There is a difference, and they do sort of complement each other. I wanted to make something for the dancers which had some kind of fluid quality about it. And so I thought, oh well, water. So then out of that comes the name Pondway. There's hopping in it and standing still and lifting your legs up and down and so on. Then everybody can say it's frogs or whatever. That's all right. I don't mind. That's perfectly all right. I remember as a child with the lake, going to the lake and skipping stones, and I just loved to do that, where it would skip a number of times across. So there was one step, I'm sure that must come from that, about how they don't really, they jump, but not high. They just go over, and then I added 2 or 3 arms, which made it harder, but more interesting to look at. Almost anything you look at, you can see in terms of movement. Not steps necessarily, just movement. How many of you ever watch the way people step up on the curb or off the curb? They always shift their weight, and usually onto the right foot because we're mostly right-sided. How many of you, in your experience, when you cross your hands, you realize what thumb you put on top, change it, and see what it's like. So that you have a different experience about movement, even as slight as that. You have to keep looking. I think there's always something. For me, there's always someplace movement. Countless, my cats, I watch them when they move around in the heat, where they go, what they do, the way they lie down, the way they get up. My drawing skill is a minimum anyway, and I can't make straight lines, so I decided plants and animals. I think it's the thing that probably attracted me, perhaps in the beginning, really was the fact that the animal and bird movement is so beautiful to watch. We can't move as animals move in any exact sense. We can pretend to imitate, but they can't really move the way we do. If one enjoys movement of any kind, which I do very much, I think that that's really part of it. Watching someone, whether a dancer or whether an animal or a bird, I think for me that's a very, well, it has always been an intense part of my experience. My interest in movement in terms of dancing is just as fascinating to me now as it was when I began. Even perhaps more so, but certainly not less. I was born in Centralia, Washington in 1919, and I grew up there. My father and mother, I think about them that they were each quite individual people. My father was a lawyer, and I asked him once why he wanted to practice in Centralia, a small town, and he said to me, because I want to practice all kinds of law. And he did, all the way from homesteading and helping Indians to murderers and kidnappers. And my mother, who's enormous energy and a quite independent spirit, she proceeded to travel all over the world, sometimes in groups and sometimes by herself.
But she was so funny, she'd never tell anybody where she was going, even her husband. She'd just leave.
And when I asked my father once about this, how he felt about that, and he said, "Oh, let her go. I like to stay home in my garden."
And my dad and his dad were best friends. And he'd have these hurdles in the yard, and my dad would always say, "Look at Merce go over the hurdles. He went over just like an antelope." And so all of us neighborhood kids would stand around and watch him go over the hurdles, but he never tried out for track. He did try out for football, made the football team, but he wasn't really enthused about it.